My name is Isa. This is the name I have chosen. It means Jesus in Arabic. I chose it because of my background. On one side, I am English British from my father's side, and I'm Colombian from South America on my mother's side. And I chose the name Isa to bridge across between my family, which have a very strong Jesus culture. It's everything's about their life and religion is to do with Jesus, and with Islam, and then to show that there's actually a big connection between Jesus and Islam. I moved to London when I was 7. I lived outside of London for a while. I also lived in Colombia, and I've been in London ever since I was 7, and I'm nearly 30 now. And I've been Muslim for about 11 years, probably more. Lose count after a while. I was baptized as a Catholic, so a lot of my education was in Catholic schools. It wasn't until college that I actually had an interaction with Muslims, and there was a long time of discussion and interaction and a lot of debates, and it was very odd to have religious people actually have a very strong and confident attitude towards talking about God, not just brush it everything off as just have faith, just have faith, just have faith. A layman seems to have all these kind of like strong answers, but if I was to go speak to a clergyman, you find a lot of difficulties. When I did my confirmation or my communion, then you go, I would always be sent back to Colombia to do this because that's where they do it properly. And the nuns used to be like, you ask a lot of questions, and would be like, you should really ask less questions and I'm like, oh, I'll just be quiet now. So generally with just lay Muslims around the college, these are just teenagers. They seem to have a lot of kind of understandings about the nature of God that as a Catholic, you would not question the nature of God, like 3 in 1, 1 in 3, all that sort of stuff. The very core beliefs, the stuff you kind of leave the discussion, you talk more like, heal without sin, cast the first stone, and it's kind of more abstract morality. But with the Muslims, it seemed to be an understanding about what God is, what's his book, who's his prophet, the stories, and I admired their knowledge in that sense. I got to a point when I was discussing with Muslims that I thought, okay, there is some truth here, but it does require changes in your life. And being from a Latin background, a lot of it would be not eating pork, which is like a staple part of the diet. On the English side, drinking at family events and work events, etc. Everything has an occasion to drink. So these two cultures seemed a bit tough to overcome. Like, how could I live my life? I never had a problem with this. It was always part of my life. So I came to a long period of time where I accepted that there may be some truths in it, but it's not for me. I have my own culture, and my culture is who I am. And it wasn't until a New Year's Eve celebration went wrong that I was like, okay, it kind of like I had to put my ego aside and be like, is dietary requirements or social norms at gatherings more important than actually God or your relationship with God? So I guess I had to kind of go through trials to kind of realize, actually, if I'm being a bit sincere, I'm being a bit silly when I weigh things out. Having a bacon sandwich and a beer isn't that important in the grand scheme of the universe. So that kind of, once I got over that hurdle, I think everyone was just pretty much simple. I asked to go to the mosque, I met people at the mosque, and I started learning, and then took my Shahada on Easter Sunday. So I ended up converting to Islam on a day when my whole family was at the church celebrating Jesus rising again. And so that was kind of an interesting day to go home as a Muslim and celebrate. Yeah, so that's my conversion. Well, what's interesting in the time period building up to after I let go of all kind of like, oh, I don't want to be this and that, I accepted, okay, I'm gonna do everything for God now. There was a very kind of like a closeness I felt with God. So when it came to taking my Shahada to testify that I was a Muslim, it almost felt like I was engaged, and that was my wedding day in a sense. Like I finally get to make it official, how I feel. And so walking into the mosque that day, leaving, everything, like it was sunshine and rainbows and stuff like that. Obviously it wears off after a while because you end up getting bogged down with life again and working and studying, etc. And I guess that's part of the strive, as of today, as you keep going, you keep trying to build that relationship. Much like a marriage, you're kind of like trying to, spend more time together, trying to communicate more. So I had that feeling, which I'm always trying to get back to. Like you just look at a sunset and you're like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. And you're so emotional by it. Or you'll see animals and you just go like, oh my God, this is amazing. So that's always that kind of going back to that feeling. So talking about it, it's like, yeah, that's that feeling I felt, that kind of closeness to God. That's what I kind of keep reminding myself I want to go back to, what I want to be at. Islam has impacted me in different ways. I mean, Islam is like a vehicle towards getting closer to God. So the point of it is that it's trying to teach my body how to how to pray, what to eat, what to do, and it's to condition yourself. It's like going through like an academy and how to then become like a master. And it's kind of teaching me the manners of how to be with God. And it's a tough thing because some things are more difficult, some things are easier. You know, like, oh, you be nice to people, give people, make 70 excuses for people as you hear something. Some stuff become easy for one person, could be difficult for another. So you may be, oh, this is a breeze, I can do this, or But then the struggle is because it's an interactive religion, and it requires interacting with many different cultures, many different people. You have to question yourself. Okay, do I become an Arab Muslim? Do I become an Asian Muslim? Do I become a Chinese Muslim? Like, and it takes a while for you to become comfortable that I'm actually myself a British, English, Colombian Muslim. I have my own cultures and I have my own kind of personality, and that kind of works in the community. And it's just a question of interacting with people. And I think that was the toughest part is trying to think, oh my God, you're like the first white person to ever convert to Islam, which you're not. And then, oh my God, no one's gonna accept you because you do this, and it's like it's not a big deal. You don't have to have hummus with everything. There's these kind of perceptions you have, like it's a very Arab religion. You gotta have tabbouleh, you gotta have Lebanese food, Syrian food. But once you get through that, once you kind of realize that Islam is a vehicle to get to God, and you remind yourself it's about God at the end of the day, that kind of gives a lot of ease when it comes to just dealing with the kind of the politics of life, the politics of interacting with people and meeting people who have never heard of an English Muslim. Like if you're traveling around the world and you meet people and they're kind of fascinated and you're wearing strange clothes for them, and it's a growing experience. Islam has changed my relationship. First I'll talk about my family because they're the people that kind of interact with me more. When I went back to Colombia as a Muslim, there was a lot of apprehension about, because they're very strong Catholic tradition, a very strong Catholic country. I was a bit worried about how they'll take to me being a Muslim, and there were comments and stuff like that. But when they met me up, and it'd been a few years as a Muslim, they saw that I was mild-mannered, I wasn't being rude, I was trying to keep to myself. If there was trouble, I was trying to get rid of the trouble. And auntie who took me to the church, who got me the training to do my communal stuff, she caught me praying, and she was just crying. And I was like, oh my God, have I upset her? And she was like, no, it's just beautiful. And then we sat down and read Surah Maryam, a chapter of Mary, which is a whole chapter dedicated to Jesus' mom and her family. And she said, like, there's not much difference between our religions, which reminds me of the interaction between the Prophet Muhammad's companions and the Negus of Abyssinia. And the kind of interaction was like, oh my God, it's like the same story. I felt like I was kind of reliving this. I was trying not to offend anyone, but then I found that my family kind of loved me more, and they loved who I become. I mean, I could have been many different things. I could have just been a typical guy. I could have just been up to no good. But they saw that it was very sane. And my mum, anyone who asked her, like, oh, you're not worried that your son's a Muslim, this and that? She goes, no, he's clean, he's sane. What could a mother ask for in a son? Especially since I converted at 17. So it's just kind of like all the things that a mother worries about, anyone's children going through. Oh my God, they're going to go out of teenager, they're going to become an adult. She said I didn't have to worry about any of that. I just knew he just cared about God, and that's what he's about. So my family, I think it was a relief for them once they got to talk to me. Friends they were a bit like, he's not coming to the parties of us, he's not doing this, he's not doing that. He's a bit boring now. But after a couple of years, after they got that out of their system, they just chilled out, and it's like, hey, cool, should we meet up for a coffee sometime and talk? And so I think some people need more time. And my English side, I think we're a bit more conservative, so we just kind of like, oh, you're like this and we're like that, and let's get on with it and have some tea. So it's not much of a big deal. I think my directions before Islam were very centralized around looking after myself, and it's always me, myself, and I. Maybe my family becomes part of that kind of world, but when becoming a Muslim, I've become more conscious about community, and not just thinking about, oh, what am I going to do for my children, but I'm thinking what we're going to do for all our children. And not even just saying, oh, all Muslim children. I'm saying that anyone who has kids, because the world isn't really necessarily getting better every year, and everyone is being affected by this. We're all under the same sky. So I'm more concerned socially about making my community, even like, not saying I'm going to change the country or the world, but just my local community, if it can just be better, even a little bit better for all of us, a little bit easier. I think that's become more conscious of me. When I wouldn't have been thinking that before, I would have been like, you got to do whatever you got to do to make yourself survive and forget everyone else. So Islam has made me more kind of socially conscious. My advice for anyone considering Islam, or the way I like to put it, anyone who's concerned about having a closer relationship with God, is remember that it's about having a closer relationship with God. But the purpose is still the same. You're trying to get closer to God. You're trying to have a relationship with Him, and He gives you guidelines and He does things for the best, and He always wants the best for you, even when it does. You know, the worst of times you think, oh, this is too much. He genuinely actually wants a relationship with you. A lot of the toughest times in my life, I can be very grateful for, because it's actually brought me closer to Him. It's brought my family closer to Him. And there's lots of humans out there, and every human has their own opinion and they interact differently. So I just say, be patient with humans, have a good opinion of God, and just focus on the goal. And that's just, it's to get to God.